this computer. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 15 of the Yellow Card Podcast. Me, as always, Chris Jones, Andrew Fasciano. And today's topics, of course, a lot of soccer to talk about. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the MLS. Unfortunately, our boys from the Revolution team got knocked down on the semifinal stage, basically. And unfortunately, we couldn't make it out of the Eastern Conference Finals as champs. But, hey, listen, when you lose into the reigning defending champion, that is the best way to go. But I'm going to let Andrew do all the talking about MLS because if there's anybody that knows better MLS than I or Chris does, even though Chris has a broad knowledge, is Andrew. So, Andrew, take it away, brother.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Columbus.
Chris's face.
What? What are we doing today? What is this topic that we're starting off with?
Hey, we're going to be talking MLS, man. Going to talk about MLS. You're actually intense on Champions League, which I can't wait to get into. But
Fun fact. Columbus Crew have never lost an MLS title game in the years that I've been to the city of Columbus. So, Columbus, if you'd like to have me back, I'll be glad to come back.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, they were fantastic last night. I had some doubts before the game, considering they were missing Darlington Nagbe and Pedro Santos. Pedro Santos probably their most complete attacking threat, and Darlington Nagbe is so important to that team with the way he's so composed under pressure. He's vital for a team like Columbus that likes to play with the ball. So I had some question marks going in without those two players. But, I mean, Aiden Morris, 19 years old, came in and replaced Nagbe and was phenomenal. Derek Etienne came in and replaced Pedro Santos and scored a beautiful goal for the second goal of the game. I mean, Chris and I were talking before we started recording. Seattle didn't even get a sniff of the game, really. I mean, Columbus was all over them from the get-go. It was a phenomenal performance. They thoroughly deserved to win the game, and it was a great send-off. I believe that's the final game that will be played in Map-Free Stadium, their historic stadium that was the first soccer-specific stadium in the U.S. So great way to go out for them. And, I mean, when you think about where they were just a couple years ago, back in 2017, when it looked like the owners were going to move the team to Austin, it's a tremendous story for them, not only to what the fan base did to keep the team around, but then also for them to have so much success and reward the faithful supporters that really saved the team and kept them in Columbus when they were potentially going to move to Austin. So it's a great story. I'm glad if the Revolution couldn't win, I'm glad we lost to the eventual champions, and you can't say that Columbus didn't deserve it based on how well they played last night.
No, and I think the biggest takeaway for me and the entire MLS playoffs was that Columbus, no matter what, they were always out with some guy. Some guy was always out, whether it was with COVID or an illness or an injury or something like that. And they rallied together as a team, and they came back and they won. They just got their starting goaltender back, legit, for the Cup final game last night. And legitimately, it's so funny because you look at this, right? Besides the Red Bulls game that they played, they literally had 3 straight clean sheets against Nashville, the Revs, and Seattle. All 3 very good teams. They were in the playoffs. They had clean sheets, and they didn't have their starting goaltender for 2 of those games. That just shows how talented that team was as a team and how great they played together. Seattle's big problem, I think, was they were still riding high off the win from Monday night in Minnesota. They were down 2-0. They came back. They won 3-2. The score that, I did predict, last week on the podcast. But I think they were still riding high on it. They were the defending champs, so everybody kind of expected them to be back there, but they didn't act like the defending champs last night, and Columbus exposed them for that. And they just, out of the gate, like, when you look at the stats and stuff like that, Columbus didn't have the possession advantage. It was all Seattle. But when Seattle was making their touches, it just wasn't what they needed to do in order to flourish the way that Seattle normally plays, and Columbus knew that. So Columbus had only 35% of the possession the entire game and still managed to get 3 goals. And they gave up that. So, shout out to Columbus.
So I have a quick question here. So, obviously, the Revolution lost to the reigning defending champions and whatever, right? But from what I saw, at least in this season, we were always the underdogs until we weren't the underdogs, right? If you were Bruce, whatever his last name is,
Arena, come on, get her out.
Arena, yeah, Bruce Arena. What are some specific signings that you target, and that you target for the future of the Revolution to then finally be a title contender, rather than just a continuous underdog writing a story? What are some future signings that you go after?
For me, there are two main positions that I'd look for the Revs to strengthen in the offseason, and that would be left wing and defensive midfielder. I know we've seen some rumors on Twitter about Bojan, who has been with the Montreal Impact, and prior to that was with Stoke City, I believe, in the Premier League, back when they were in the top division. He's a really talented player. He sort of strikes me as the type of player that's he's more of a luxury player than Teal Bunbury is, who is currently in that left wing slot. Like, Teal Bunbury is going to contribute defensively more, and he's going to be more consistent than someone like Bojan. But I would say that Bojan's ceiling is higher. He's a really talented player, and he could contribute things to the attack that, as good as Teal is, he doesn't have in his locker. So that will be interesting to see whether or not there's any legs to that rumor. In terms of central midfielder, I don't really have any names off the top of my head. And I think that position right now with Scott Caldwell and Matt Polster, they did a pretty good job in the postseason. But I think if you bring someone in who can be almost more of a pure ball winner, Caldwell and Polster are both really hardworking players, and they're gonna get up and down the field and provide support to both the defense and the forwards. But if you can have someone who excels at winning the ball off the opposition forwards, I think that would be helpful to a Revolution back line that has really flourished and come into their own. Considering how young the defense is, outside of Andrew Farrell, 3 of the 4 starters for all the playoff games are in their early 20s. So I'm excited to see that defensive group continue to develop and gel together with Henry Kessler, Buchanan, Jones. And I think adding another defensive midfielder would only help with that development. So for me, those are the two positions. I mean, I think the Revolution have a very good team even without any additions right now. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But if I had to pick two positions to add to, those would be my choices.
Okay.
So I would real quick before we move on to it, I would agree with it. I think one big thing for them is I feel like besides what's his name? Buxa. Besides Buxa, they really don't have like that like forward that can literally play up top. Like, so I feel like they need like another like depth forward, not someone who needs to play every single night, but someone who can, if Buska's not in top form, you can have him fill in for a game and then get the ball rolling. Because I feel like with this year with Buska is they literally just they played him, I feel like, as much as they could, which was, I feel like, every game.
Yeah.
And it was a big downfall because against Columbus, he just looked exhausted. He looked tired. The kid's only 24 years old. You got to take some sort of pressure off him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. They definitely do need striker depth. I agree.
I was going to say, now, do you also look for – do you look into the European League and say, this person's basically ready to retire, but we need somebody with that leadership skill to come into this Revolution team so that we can then, in the future, make further investments to grow our team to be a bigger force to be reckoned with. So kind of like LA did with getting Chicharito, or kind of like New York City did with getting David Villa when he was coming to New York City, or like Orlando City did with Nani. Like, does the Revolution do something drastic like that to then be able to have a brighter future investing, or do you think that just simply Robert Kraft doesn't have it in the cards for him?
Yeah, I mean, the issue with that is that the Revs currently have 3 designated players in Bo, Heel, and Buxa. I believe you can only have 3 designated players on a roster. I might be wrong about that, but that's my understanding. So if they were to do that, they would have to that player would have to count against the salary cap, which then limits your options in terms of other players. So my gut feeling is that that's probably not likely to happen, but
2 designated players, 2.
Oh, it's 2. Oh, that's even worse. That makes it even more complicated.
Clubs with 2 may add a third by paying $150,000.
Which we all know that isn't going to be invested.
Well, no, it goes to like the other teams in like the league and stuff like that. They divvy it up and like.
Okay, so since they have 3, they do not have another slot available.
Okay.
So I also think real quick, and when you bring up names like Chicharito going to like LA and you got people going to New York, when they're playing in, you know, the nicer parts of that respective state. When you come to the Revolution, you play in legit nowhere. You play at Gillette Stadium. That's why they need to build a stadium closer. If they could go north of Boston, their following would be higher up, and I feel like they would make a lot more money. But until that, no player is going to want to live in Boston and then have to drive all the way down.
Absolutely agree.
To play. So
Absolutely agree.
That's a big reason why I don't think personally a big European name would come here unless you get a better stadium.
Yeah, unless you get a bigger following too, because let's say, for example, like if you were to put the Revolution Stadium to be now like in the Boston College campus or like that BU Stadium right outside the city in I think it's Brighton, Austin area.
Yeah, Brighton, Austin.
Like how amazing would that be? How amazing would that be?
With BC, you can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it with BC because BC's all the way up in Chestnut Hill, and no one wants to go there either. That's the thing. That's why BC doesn't have a great following either because they're all the way up in Chestnut Hill. With BU hockey and stuff like that, you literally just go right into Boston and you're right there.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the thing. Absolutely. So they fumbled the bag because before they built everything that was in Assembly Row, they could have easily had that and then in the back had the soccer stadium. But they just
you still have
close on it.
So you still actually have a very good opening still within that area too, because Suffolk Down was supposed to be.
That's another one. They could go to Suffolk Downs too.
Exactly. Suffolk Down was supposed to be the Everett Casino, and it was not invested into. And so go ahead.
That area is very, again, soccer heavy, soccer oriented.
Well, not only that, but
you'd bring them in.
Yeah, you got a gigantic Hispanic following in that area. Not to target demographics, but you got a gigantic Hispanic area. You also got a large European area as well, because there's a lot of Italians, a lot of Portuguese, a lot of Spaniards within this area as well. And now you're just outside of the city as well. So now you not only have to worry about the traffic coming into that area, but you can also rely on public transportation to take you into that area because there is so many options to get to that area if you were to build a stadium there, and you build it for cheap because nobody right now is investing in that area. And you also take advantage of a pandemic situation where the market in itself is just completely down. Nobody's investing in big properties right now. And that is a perfect example for the Revolution to have a massive win coming forward. Like Chris was saying, if you build it in a place where you can actually get a massive following, you would get all these European guys coming to you like nothing. They will help you build their future. Absolutely.
The other thing, too, is as long as the Revs play at Gillette, they're just going to be known as the other team at Gillette, right?
Yes.
I feel
they need their own soccer stadium. That's the thing.
It's vital for their own team identity for them to have a place of their own to call their home. And right now, I mean, the traction that the Revs have generated with this playoff run, I feel like it's more than I've seen before with this team. So what better time to continue building on that and continue actually establishing yourself as one of Boston's teams. And I think, like you guys are saying, that the most needed next step in that process is a stadium up
I agree.
The last thing I'll do before we touch on another topic is that if you look at the MLS, right, and it's going in the right direction, but how many other teams share a stadium with somebody else?
Yeah.
Not that many, or
No.
if any at all.
No, I mean, look at Los Angeles, for example.
Everybody else has their own soccer stadium.
Yeah.
They Robert Kraft and company either sell it to someone who do something with the team or legitimately move them from Foxborough to somewhere else. But let's transition. Let's talk. Let's do Champions League. Let's talk Champions League. Match day 6 of 6 has completed.
The most miserable week of my life.
some of these results were just comical. Also, real quick, I said this on the Chasers podcast earlier this week, and I also want to do it here as well. From us at the Yellow Card podcast, we also are saying no to racism. What happened in the PSG Istanbul Başakşehir game was atrocious. It was outrageous. It shouldn't be in any sport. It shouldn't be in any sort of day, any sort of part of anybody's day.
Absolutely. No, and I would also touch up on that too, because there's a lot of controversy as to what happened, right? A lot of people these days are just like, oh, if you just say the word black, you're racist. No, it's not that. It's in the infrastructure of the conversation and how it was delivered. Minutes before that situation took place, the fourth ref mentioned a person of no color by their name and addressed them by their name. But simply because the other person that was of color and perhaps maybe the ref just struggled to remember that person's last name or whatever, that's fine. But you're in a professional place in by far probably the second largest, grandest stage in soccer, right behind the World Cup. You gotta keep some sense of level of professionalism. And when you're addressing a black person just by that black guy, you yourself putting yourself out for failure, and for others to think of you as not only a racist person, but somebody who just simply does not care about what's going on around the world and what the true meaning of soccer means, which is bringing people of all backgrounds together to enjoy one simple language, which is the beautiful game. And so when somebody just says to me, and I had this discussion earlier during the week with somebody who is a very passionate soccer follower, it's not just, oh, he just said, oh, it's that black guy. No, it's the context of the full conversation that happened and the timing that it happened. And for even somebody like Thomas Tuchel to just basically gather his team and say, we're out, we're walking out now, everybody off the field. Like, you know that there was a lot of emotion happening right then. And the fourth ref didn't even bother to issue an apology, which is a simple professional thing to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I feel like I've seen people who have said that the players overreacted or whatever. I think those people just aren't even listening to what Demba Ba said, because the way that, given the heat of the moment, the way that Demba Ba composed himself and explained so clearly exactly why what was said was wrong was incredibly impressive. So hats off to Demba Ba, hats off to the PSG players to come together with the Istanbul players and make a strong statement. It was absolutely horrible that it happened, but the reaction was incredibly impressive, and I'm glad that the players came together to make such a strong statement to show that we're just not going to stand for that. That can't continue to happen. Like Chris said, it shouldn't happen in soccer. It shouldn't happen in daily life. And yeah, it was incredibly impressive the way that Demba Ba and the other players gathered themselves and made a firm statement against it.
Absolutely. But moving on from that subject, which is it's just a disheartening subject in itself. Chris had a fantastic week. Me, not so much. I struggle left and right. But listen, Rome wasn't built in a day. And every great empire takes a fall to then rebuild itself. So, Chris, good luck. I'm coming for you for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Speaking of empires that had a fall, oh boy.
Oh, we collapsed. We didn't just have a fall. We collapsed.
Oh boy, was I loving life on Tuesday.
Listen,
This happened.
Listen, Manchester United on Tuesday was like a recently bought Lego that you just struggled to build, and you got so pissed and you just smacked it to fall all down. That was exactly Manchester United. They had everything going for them. Everything. All they needed was a simple tie or just to compose themselves in the game. They had nothing to do with it. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was by far the most disgraceful Manchester United game I've ever watched in the past 5 years of continuous struggle with Manchester United. But besides that, that's my end of rant.
So we'll just touch upon the records real quick. So we'll start with Andrew. Andrew went 10-6 last week. He's 28-20 overall. Diego went 8-8. He's 55-43 overall. And I went 12-4, and I am 59-39 overall in picks. Let's look at real quick the perfect score, which is a new thing we're going to do on who gets the score exactly on the dot. I had Dortmund 2-1 on the dot. No one in the Lazio game. No one in Juventus game. You know, somebody in here took the draw. Yikes. Somebody here took Barcelona to win. Double yikes. We also took Chelsea. No one got that one. No one picked Leipzig to win. Yikes, because, you know, we had hope in our co-host over here. Dynamo Kiev. We also did 2-0. They won 1. Sevilla. Andrew and I were closest with 2-1. Liverpool. No. No one even thought the PSG score was going to be that bad.
No. That was abusive.
I was the only one that took Atalanta. We also did Bayern Munich by a bunch. Real Madrid. Andrew was very close. He said that Gladbach scored no goals. He would have got that perfect. Diego got Atletico right on the head with 2-0 there. 3-0 Man City. I got that, so that's 2 for me. 1 for Diego. The 0-0 draw for Inter and Shakhtar was probably the most surprising thing I saw. And then Porto 2-0. Where are you? I got it, and you also got it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I'm looking at it now. Andrew got Man City 3-0. So I missed out. So I had 3, Diego had 2, Andrew had 1. So we're real quick. We could just go over all of it. So the 8 group winners were Group A was Bayern Munich, Group B was Real Madrid, Group C was Manchester City, Group D Liverpool, Group E Chelsea, Group F Dortmund, Group G Juventus, and Group H PSG. Notice the trend there, Andrew? There was 4 EPL teams, and 3 out of the 4 won. And there's one that's going back to the Europa League.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of trends, I think 15 of the 16 teams that have qualified for the knockout stage are from the big 5 leagues. I believe Porto is the only team not from England, Spain, Germany, Italy, or France.
I believe you're right on that because you have so the group runner-ups, Group A was Atletico Madrid, Group B was Gladbach, Group C was Porto, Group D was Atalanta, Group E was Sevilla, Group F was Lazio, Group G was Barcelona, and Group H was RB Leipzig. So this year we're getting a little more German flavor in, as we have 1, 2, 3, 4 German teams in. Usually we get like maybe 2. So I'm excited. So real quick, the draw is tomorrow for the round of 16, which will take place. The first one I believe is in February, and then the second one's in March. The first leg and the second leg where they do a home and home, and then on the aggregate and all that fun stuff that cost Juventus last year. But we'll start with Andrew. Andrew, give me your predictions on who you think is going to play who in the round of 16.
Yeah, so I've basically just done this on matchups that I'd like to see, what I think will be exciting. So starting with Bayern, I have Sevilla as their opponents. Sevilla, of course, have been very good in Europe, although mostly in the Europa League. So they've switched it up this year and qualified for the round of 16.
So you're proposing a rematch of the
Super Cup.
The Super Cup.
Oh,
All right.
yes.
I love that.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
That's a good. That's a good headline potential. Go ahead.
Then Real Madrid, I went with Lazio for their opponent. Manchester City, I've picked Leipzig as one that I think would be an exciting matchup. I went with Liverpool and Porto. I believe they played.
Oh, give Liverpool the easy draw.
Liverpool beat Porto when they won, right? The first.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe you're right.
That would be another interesting storyline. This next one for me, if it happens, would be the most exciting game of the round for me. Chelsea and Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid has been, prior to this weekend when they lost 2-0 to Real Madrid, they've been on an incredible defensive run, and Chelsea has been a very good offensive team. So I think that would be an interesting matchup stylistically. Then I've gone with Dortmund against Atalanta. It'll be interesting to see who Dortmund's manager is at that point. One name that I've heard floated around is Jesse Marsch of the United States and currently managing Red Bull Salzburg. That would be a really exciting move. He's been really good with Salzburg. So
that'd be a big get for Dortmund if they can do that.
That's the first time. That's the first time that you don't hear a big name like Mauricio Pochettino be brought up, because Pochettino is involved in absolutely everything.
Right. Yeah.
He's like the coronavirus of 2020. He's involved in everything.
Yikes.
Yeah, every time there's an opening, his name comes up. But that would be a huge move for not just Marsch himself, but U.S. soccer. That would be really cool to see an American manager at a club of that stature. I went with Juventus against Gladbach, and then PSG Barcelona for the Messi Neymar battle storyline.
Oh, he's going for the heartbreak on Chris Jones, Juventus and Gladbach. Woo! Woo! Dude, that is harsh.
It's just so funny because I was looking at this, and when I was looking at it, I was like, all right, who don't I want Juventus to play? And I was like, oh, that's who. And guess what? In my predictions, you know who I have Juventus playing? And I'm going next. You know who I have Juventus playing? Gladbach. It's going to happen just because they need to give Ronaldo another one of those, they should beat them, but they're not going to. And that's going to aggravate me because I know how good Gladbach can be. So for me, that's the first one. Second one, I'm going Bayern and Porto. I think Bayern Munich's going to get the lucky draw. And with the way that the Champions League worked, Porto wasn't one of the worst runner-ups, but they also weren't one of the best. So for me, points-wise, so for me personally, I feel like they will go and face Bayern because they can't face Gladbach, who finished with 8 points, which was the fewest for a runner-up. They can't play Atletico Madrid again, and I just don't see Atalanta or Lazio getting that draw. For Lazio and Atalanta, though, I have Madrid and Lazio is mine. I just think they want Madrid to go as far as possible because it's good for TV right now. Man City and Atalanta, which I think would be a fantastic set of games. I have Liverpool, Sevilla. I would love to see this matchup because both teams actually finished 4-1-1 in group league stage. So I think, and with Liverpool's recent injury of Diego Jota being out for 6 to 8 weeks, you just wonder if he'll actually be ready by the time that the Champions League kicks off. Then I have Dortmund and Atletico, which I think would just create headlines because I think Haaland going up against João Felix is just going to be must-watch TV. Mm-hmm. And then my two big matchups, I have Chelsea and RB Leipzig. Timo Werner facing his former team, I think would be must-watch. And they didn't expect that Leipzig would come out of the group stage, so they have to take full advantage of it. In my opinion, this will happen. And then I agree with Andrew, PSG and Barcelona. It writes itself. There's no reason why you can't do Barcelona and PSG. I just don't see how they go about it. This is the perfect time to do it. You got your Messi, Ronaldo. Now you need Neymar and Messi again. And also, too, it's just so funny because you talk about the PSG game and you talk about how good Neymar played. And it was so bittersweet to our good friend Diego here because he can't stand the guy. And Neymar just shoves a hat trick in his face and basically eliminates Man United out of the Champions League.
Neymar's just brutal. He's just brutal. But the only reason I can't stand him is because of how, not only just how hypocritical he is, but also the fact that the guy is just made. I think that after soccer, his next step is actually Hollywood because he would be a phenomenal actor of pain and emotion. Like he would be in like Spanish telenovelas or stuff like that. He'd be that perfect protagonist in those novellas. But
saying Neymar would be good on Telemundo, dude. Come on, get out of here.
No, Univision, higher ratings. So, while we wait a few seconds for me and Chris Jones to compose himself, I'm gonna announce my round of 16. My round of 16 predictions, which I'll be honest with you, I know these are not likely to happen. I know how the Champions League works. I'm just here for the bold takes. That's it.
Do you?
All right. But this is what it's gonna look like, according to my bold takes. Barcelona versus Manchester City. I want to see that match because there has been so many rumors of Lionel Messi rejoining Pep Guardiola. And if that is true, what better match than to have a Champions League qualifying round between Barcelona and Manchester City?
Has Man City knock them out? Oh.
Exactly. I know, not likely to happen. I know. Again, though, how predictable would that be? How beautiful would that be? I want to see Atalanta versus Real Madrid. It is a fair match between the two. The two struggle left and right in several positions. And I want to see who would be the biggest struggler here. Would it be that Real Madrid finally sacks Zinedine Zidane and moves forward from that era? Or would it be that Atalanta's chapter is done and over with in the Champions League? I agree with the Chelsea-Leipzig matchup. I absolutely want to see that. I agree with Chris on that. The Timo Werner episode there would be fantastic to watch. But again, it is a hell of a matchup too because RB Leipzig being that defensive core that they are, but Chelsea being that attacking core that they are, it's just such an even match to watch that you just can't pass on it. I want to see Dortmund versus Gladbach. Simply because I just do. I want to see Juventus versus Liverpool. I want to see Ronaldo go against somebody like Jurgen Klopp. I just do. PSG versus Atletico. That would be a hell of a matchup too. A sucky matchup between Lazio and Porto. But I agree with Sevilla and Bayern. That's who I want to see. That's that.
You do know that you just gave two group winners playing each other, right?
And
that's not how it works.
Again, I knew that this isn't how it worked. I knew that these are just going to be imaginary matchups.
Nope, these are predictions that we were predicting for the round. We weren't giving imaginary matchups. We weren't giving
what we wanted
to see. We were giving predictions. Come
on,
Diego, know the segment. This kid. Oh.
Like I told you, I know how the Champions League works. I know that. But I'm just here making the sacrificial bold takes that I know are not going to happen, but I agree with three matches happening there. I definitely agree. I definitely want to actually see PSG versus Barcelona, just simply because of that Neymar versus Lionel Messi matchup, in all honesty. I agree with the Bayern versus Sevilla. Like, that is a hell of a matchup bound to happen as well. But if we're going to be realistically speaking, though, I think everybody in this round of 16 is aiming to play Barcelona. Everybody wants to play Barcelona right now.
Every single group winner wants to play Barcelona.
Exactly.
That can besides Real Madrid.
Yeah, but
they can't.
Whether it's Bayern, imagine Bayern Barcelona again, and Bayern smokes them again. Imagine that.
I'd love it.
And that'd be just such a slap in the face that no matter who you have as a coach, Bayern Munich will continue to be your daddy. Like that is just a perfect round. But again, I agree too. Like everybody wants to play Real Madrid because they're just struggling. And how good would it be to last year a German team beat the living shit out of a giant Spanish team? How good would it be for an English team or maybe even Dortmund to beat the living crap out of Real Madrid? Like how good would that be? But again, let's wait and see what happens in tomorrow's draw. Tomorrow's draw also brings the Europa League draw, which of no surprise there, the typical participant there is Manchester United. It is so sad just to watch this happening too, because so much invested into the season, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer leaves it to the last game with the most inconsistent lineup to be played in the whole entire year, and does it again. Like, how many times does Ole need to see that this lineup just doesn't work until he realizes that it doesn't work? I just don't know it.
When he's at home without a job, that's when I realize it.
Like it's terrible. I don't get how you line up against a Leipzig team that is their formation that has always worked. What were you trying to accomplish? That, I'm the better coach. I know how to make this formation work better than you? Like, no, you don't. That's not Manchester United's game at all. That lineup that Chris said in a few episodes before, I think it was like a 4-2-3-1 or something like that, Chris?
I said last week that they needed to do the exact lineup that they ran when they beat them 5-0, which was the 4-1-2-1-2. That's not what he did.
Exactly. That 4-1-2-1-2. Exactly. Thank you for reminding me. But no, he just went with almost a 3-5-2 format, which has barely ever worked for Manchester United. Maybe out of 5 times that he's called it, maybe it's worked once. It's ridiculous. At what point do you finally just move on from that type of mindset and have a consistent lineup, which has been my preaching chorus all season long? He needs to have a consistent lineup. He can't continue just put pieces together here like he's building a freaking puzzle. It's not that complicated. You imagine a team that's got a lot of talent in there, get a consistent lineup, and move on with it. But regardless of that, there was also some good stuff happening in the Premier League. We saw an Everton side beat a strong Chelsea side. Andrew, I know you're an Everton fan, man, and I know this is your happy hour right now.
Oh, just stop and let him talk about it. Andrew, what were your thoughts on yesterday?
Yeah, well, give it to us, man. Give it to us because I know you're extremely happy, and it shows. You can't even hide it.
Full disclosure, I was expecting Chelsea to win this game. I mean, they've been on a great run of form, and as much as I wanted Everton to win, I didn't see it happening. So I'm thrilled that they managed to pull off that victory. And here's my main thing about this game. I'm hoping that this performance kind of puts a little bit of a stop to some of the reactionary takes around Everton that I've seen so far this season. So if you go back to the start of the season, they obviously won the first 4 Premier League games. And I saw lots of people wondering whether they would be able to, challenge for the top 4 or even challenge for the title. My thing with that is that I think if they had won 4 straight Premier League games in the middle of February, for example, no one would care and no one would be saying those things. The thing is, it was the only sample that people had to go off because it was the first 4 games of the season. So therefore, people are going to look at that and make those bold predictions. So in some ways, I think Everton's start to the year was a bit of a double-edged sword because I think people kind of took them for something that they just aren't quite at this point in time. But then that goes the same way too, more recently when they've been struggling, losing to Leeds, drawing with Burnley. I've seen people wondering whether or not Ancelotti is past his best and saying that Everton is terrible, which, again, I think that's just not true. I think what Everton are is an upper mid-table team that probably, depending on injuries and form of other teams, could finish anywhere from like 6th to 10th in the league this year. And I think along the way, they're going to have some frustrating performances where they lose, like against Leeds, but they're also going to have some great performances where they beat really good teams like Chelsea this weekend. And if you look back when Jurgen Klopp came into Liverpool, his first season, the 2015-16 season in Liverpool, he had a 44.2 winning percentage. Ancelotti currently has been in charge at Everton for around a calendar year, and he has a 47.2% winning percentage. So 3% better than Jurgen Klopp did in his first year at Liverpool. I think the main thing that I'm trying to get at is that this is a work in progress, and I think people need to be patient. Ancelotti's a fantastic manager, but the squad that he inherited when he first came in was not a very good one. And he's taken steps to improve it, but still, they're not going to be world beaters every week, every time out. But more specifically, with the Chelsea match, I was glad that he went back to a back four instead of 3 center backs and wing backs, because without Seamus Coleman and Lucas Digne in the lineup, I think that back three just doesn't work.
Exactly.
And even though he was playing center backs as fullbacks basically against Chelsea with Ben Godfrey and Mason Holgate, I thought they did a fantastic job, particularly Ben Godfrey. He's been really, really good since he's joined from Norwich. He's played center back in both fullback positions, and he looks like he just genuinely enjoys making life difficult for opposition attackers. So that's been great to see, and something that's been missing, in my opinion, for this Everton team. And then the other standout for me was Gylfi Sigurdsson. He's been somewhat of a scapegoat over the past couple of seasons with Everton fans, and frankly, not without good reason. Like, he hasn't necessarily lived up to the amount of money they spent for him. But he was really, really good yesterday. I think Everton had 7 chances and he created 6 of them, which is just about all you can ask for a creative midfielder. So if Everton can get that Gylfi Sigurdsson going forward, that's such a huge help to the midfield depth, especially when someone like James is out of the lineup. In previous games, the creativity has basically not been there without James. So if Sigurdsson can play like that, that really helps, because one thing that we've talked about is that Everton's first 11 is solid, but then the depth beyond that lacking. So great game by Sigurdsson, encouraging for the future. But yeah, my main thing is that it's a work in progress, and I think people would do well to be a bit more patient rather than making snap judgments one way or the other at this point.
Absolutely. And I mean, I actually like the fact that you brought up the statistical matchups between the two coaches, between Carlo Ancelotti and Jurgen Klopp, because if you look at the internal aspects of each club too, like Everton is just finally starting to have investment money that they can put into personnel as well. Well, Liverpool has always had that money. They can go after anybody basically, and they can get them because they've had that money. While Everton right now is just, I agree with you. They're in a building process where Ancelotti is having to work with maybe not some of the best talent either. I mean, defensively, you can go after 3 defenders right now, basically. If Ancelotti had the money to work with, he could go after David Alaba. He could go after Rafael Varane from Real Madrid. He could go after Upamecano if he wanted to for a center back to support Jerry Mina. But in the midfield part of things, as you just mentioned too, is the creativity part of things. And I know I've mentioned this signing before too as a potential signing, but it would be extremely needed for Ancelotti's career at Everton for him to get somebody as creative as Isco from Real Madrid, or maybe even pursue a younger talent like either Daniel James from Manchester United, if Manchester United gets that swap of Paul Pogba for Cristiano Ronaldo or Paul Pogba for Paulo Dybala. but they could also get somebody young who isn't being utilized like Jesse Lingard and who can create havoc in that midfield position. It's extremely needed for Everton because, like you just said, if James Rodriguez isn't in the game, there is no creativity. But if Richarlison isn't in the game, then there is no aggression. So, it's a double-edged sword for sure for Everton, but I'm actually extremely happy with them. As a matter of fact, you guys are on top of Manchester United and Manchester City right now. It's the 7th and 8th, 9th spot between Everton, Manchester United, Manchester City. And it's ridiculous because Manchester United has made so many signings, and again, the inconsistency issue. But then you have a phenomenal Manchester City side that, unfortunately, I think their main focus this year is really just Champions League, so that next year they can actually make that money as an investment force to then rebuild the Manchester City that they can be for the Premier League. But then you go over to a team like Arsenal, for example, who brought in Thomas Partey and continues to struggle. Chris, what are your takes on Arsenal? I know you were a big guy on Partey, and I know you were excited as hell on that signing. But what's going on there? Like, what do you think is going on with Mikel Arteta? Is he the next coach to possibly get sacked in the Premier League?
It's just, for whatever reason, he just can't find a lineup that works for him with the team that he has right now.
He's got the socialized syndrome.
But it's just, he tries so many different things. And I think, in all honesty, they need to do one or two things. They need to choose between Lacazette and Aubameyang. Because lately, when they're both on there, like Aubameyang just signed his big deal, he's been horrendous for Arsenal in the Premier League this year. When it comes to the Europa League and stuff like that, he contributes, but not as much as he has in the past. So they need to figure out what direction they want to go in. And the big thing that they need to look at, and I've said it before, is so once they figure out who they want out of them, then what they need to do is they need to get a legitimate other center back. You can't ride Rob Holding?
He's at the
Rob Holding. You can't ride Rob Holding. Gabriel is going to be very good. Gabriel is very good. I'm not saying that. And then Mustafi is also very good. Mustafi is not an every game center back. He's every other, like he's a fill-in. You can't have Rob Holding as your other starting center back. They need to go make a move on a center back and take Lacazette or Aubameyang, whichever one you don't think can fit with this team. Go back to your 4-3-3 and ride out. And if it doesn't work for Arteta, then sack him. Other than that, for me personally, they're just a piece away, and they need to figure out which one of their strikers they want.
Let me ask you this, Chris. So obviously, Arsenal just gave that gigantic deal to Aubameyang and whatever. And like I said, it has always been a big centerpiece for Arsenal, regardless, right?
Yep.
Do you think that instead of just having to choose between the two of who to start, do you repurpose one of them for a new role? So let's say, for example, Aubameyang becomes the Bruno Fernandes of Manchester United, right? Who is the creative centerpiece, so that Lacazette can then create chances up front and be that continuous moving forward? Or do you think the Lacazette becomes that either left wing or right winger that is creating havoc on the side, so that Aubameyang has an open space to then be able to create chances?
So
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I have a question related to that as well, because if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that Arteta has used Lacazette almost as a number 10 at times this season, because Arsenal has been struggling with creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to do that and take away from what he excels at as a striker, why are you just not using Mesut Ozil, who is actually a creative midfielder who should be in that role?
He has some personal vendetta against Ozil for whatever reason. I couldn't tell you what it is, but for whatever reason, he has some issue with Ozil. And what they're going to do is Ozil, and you know what's going to happen. Ozil's going to go to another team in the Premier League. I don't know which one, but he's going to go to another team in the Premier League just to spite Markel Atara. The thing with that is, and they did this last year, and it worked out. It worked out very good. You have Aubameyang on the left wing. You play Lacazette up front. You got Willian to be your right wing because you didn't trust Pepe. Play the 4-3-3. Go Lacazette. You have Aubameyang, Willian here. You go in the middle. You got Partey. You still got Xhaka. And you have Bukayo Saka as well that you could throw in the midfield. Just a regular midfield. All you need is 3 regular midfielders. You play Thomas in the middle, then you have the other 2 on the sides, and you literally go 4 in the back. Listen, Leno's not your problem. That their goaltending has been it has been the greatest, but Leno is not getting help. And the big thing for Arsenal is if they want to take that next step, they have to realize that, okay, this isn't working. And last year when we did the stuff that was working, we were winning games. So you need to figure out. So worst comes to worst, we see in the transfer window in the winter, Lacazette is going somewhere, I think. Because they paid the money for Aubameyang, but Aubameyang has grossly underperformed. He's already played in 11 games. He's played in all 11 games so far, and he has 2 goals. That's not Aubameyang. So they need to figure it out.
Well, I mean, another thing that I can see happen in the transfer window too is there's been a lot of headlines as of late of RB Leipzig's transfer interest on Dominic. Oh, good luck to me spelling out his last name. No. No, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is Everton. No, they're talking about RB Leipzig and Arsenal transfer. I think it's Dominic Szoboszlai. I think it's his last name.
Hang on a second. Hold on. Yeah, good luck trying to say that. Good luck trying to say that.
Yeah, it's actually it's not RB Leipzig. I'm sorry, it's RB Salzburg. I confused it too.
It is RB Leipzig. You're right.
Is it Leipzig?
Yeah, it is Leipzig.
Okay. Yeah, so Szoboszlai to come to Arsenal, but again though, I actually agree with Chris of Mesut Ozil going to another Premier League team, and I actually be willing to bet money that Premier League team would actually be Everton, because that is exactly what Everton could use for as a secondary creative superstar in the midfield. Imagine a lineup between James Rodriguez, Mesut Ozil, Richarlison, and let's say they get Daniel James as well on that midfield. Then you just have Dominic Calvert-Lewin just creating havoc left and right in that forward position, like a happy camper out there.
Yeah,
that's in my opinion. Again,
I think I have to disagree a little bit. My preference for a central midfielder for Everton, if they get one in January, would be someone who's a little bit more dynamic and can go box to box.
Well, that too. Yeah,
I think my preferred target, like you said, is like a pacey attacking option, probably a winger like Daniel James. I would be thrilled with Daniel James. Leon Bailey is another name from Leverkusen who I've seen thrown around, who I'd be excited by. I think Everton, in attack, Everton do need another option with pace who is direct and runs at defenses, because if Richarlison is out of the lineup, they don't have another winger who does that. James Rodriguez, love him, great player, but that's not his game. Alex Iwobi, starting to come into his own, has been good recently. That's not his game either. So if Richarlison is out of the lineup, they don't have anyone who can do that. And then if they don't have anyone who can do that, that basically takes away half of James' skill set, because he needs someone to run at the defenses to pass to. So I don't know how realistic Daniel James would be. I would like that transfer, though. I think he is young enough where it could work out for a while, and it seems like he's not getting a ton of games at Manchester United right now. So it might work well for all parties.
So the last thing I'm going to say before I'm going to be done for the day is another move for Mesut Ozil. So it's either he's going in the EPL, or he's going to stay in the EPL, I should say, or he's coming to America. I could see him fill right in down in either Inter Miami, DC United, or any team like or like LA. Any of those big markets, I could see him just coming in and just taking the league by storm.
That's actually not a bad call either.
Yeah.
That's not a
Inter
bad call.
Miami could be a good destination. I like that prediction.
David Beckham. He'll do what he needs to do. But I think that concludes episode 15 of the Yellow Card podcast. From myself, Diego Galvez, Andrew Fasciano. Stay tuned. Next Sunday, we have episode 16. We'll go over the Champions League and the round of 16 draw and give our predictions and many more. So stay tuned. Also, make sure you guys are following us on Twitter. Make sure you guys are watching us on YouTube, all the other platforms that are on Spotify, iTunes, all that fun stuff, because we got a lot in store for you coming up.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Thank you again for tuning to episode 15, and we'll see you guys next week.